Okay, the first thing that we're going to do when we get ready to work on a TypeScript and WebPack project together is we're going to install a few dev dependencies. So we're going to say npm I dash capital D. We're going to say TypeScript, WebPack, and TS dash loader. So we'll give npm a chance to install those real quick. And I want to show this TS config that I have in my project. So this is a TS config that's pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and target just ES5, CommonJS, React. We want to make sure that we're going to send our out to a dist. Source maps are fine, and we're going to include the source director here. Some people have actually been transpiling to ES6 as a target and then using Babel to transpile even further, but I kind of prefer to just use TypeScript by itself. As that's installing, what we're going to do is jump over here and we're going to start with an empty Webpack config, and I'm going to add a few properties to this config. So what I want to start with is an entry, and we're going to point our entry to a .source/index.tsx file. What's interesting about that is TypeScript can actually read that in as well, even though it's a TSX. So then I'm going to make sure that we have a dev tool of our source map. Okay. Then I want to make sure that we're outputting our TypeScript to a bundle in dist. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we want to make sure that Webpack actually understands that we are working with TS and TSX rather than just JS. So we're going to say extensions. We're going to pass it an array. As of Webpack 2 and later, you don't have to have an empty string in the beginning of this list. That used to be a thing you have to do, but that is no longer required. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and set up our rules for how to use TypeScript in the TS loader. So we're going to say module, and this is now rules, an array of objects, and we're going to test for anything with a .ts or tsx at the end of the file name. Right? And then we're going to say that the loader is the ts-loader. Okay. So this is our basic Webpack config. Let's make sure that it's all done over here, and it is. Great. All right, so now let's go in and put something inside of our tsx file for the first time. Let's just start with a simple console.log. You can immediately see that VS Code is giving me autocomplete on the console methods, which is really cool. And so we can say, hey, TypeScript. All right, and let's just go in and run Webpack and make sure that everything got set up correctly. All right, so it says it can't find .source/index.tsx. That's okay, that's something we can fix real quick. Oh, ./source.index.tsx. Simple mistakes. There we go. And you can see that it decided to use the TS loader, and it emitted a dist bundle and a dist bundle.map for the source map, which is great. So obviously there's no real TypeScript in here, so this is where the fun begins. Let's actually make this, let's actually go ahead and install React and a few types to get started with TypeScript and React now. So in order to get started here, we need to npm install React. Let's go ahead and just get React DOM so we have it. Now this is where things get interesting. I could stop here, but with TypeScript, there's this nice community maintained list of types at this @types repository on npm and on GitHub. From definitely typed is where the repo is on GitHub. So what we can do is we actually want to make sure that we install @types/react and @types/react-dom. And the reason we do that is so that TypeScript will automatically look in that @types directory. This is something built into the language now, or to the platform, and basically know how React looks. There's all kinds of definition files in there to make TypeScript work, so you can get autocomplete and all that. There's tens of thousands of those type definitions in the definitely typed, so make sure you go check that out. It's really neat. So we'll go ahead and get these installing, and as that's going, we'll jump back over here to code. So the first thing that we're going to do is import React. And the first thing that's going to be kind of weird looking at first is that you have to do this import star as from React when you're using when you're doing it in TypeScript. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create an app component that we will render on a window. So we're going to get React, and then we're also going to get the render method off of React DOM. React-DOM. Great. And now let's go ahead and create a class called app. So immediately what you're going to notice is that when I type React.component here, you can see how it's giving me nice autocomplete. And in TypeScript, there's this concept of generics. And this generic for a React.component takes two properties. The first one is the props that you are going to use in this component, and the second is the state that you're going to use in this component. So in the beginning here, I'm not going to really have anything. So we can just use an empty object, and that's fine. So now we're going to return a div, and we'll just say hello world. And we'll stop here for now. And let's go over here to the command line and go ahead and run Webpack again. Just make sure everything is going swimmingly still. Sure is. Okay. So now let's actually get to a point where we're doing something useful with this. So we've got an app component. We can actually still render this, pretend like we're rendering this to the window. I just love this autocomplete. It's such a nice feature of this whole thing. And if you type document.getElement_by-id, TypeScript has all these types built in based on the TypeScript core libraries. So it's really nice to be able to just have all that going. All right, so now let's create like a message component that we can import here. So I'm going to create a components directory under my source. Okay. And let's create a message component. Again, we're going to use a .tsx here. So once again, we want to do import star as React from React. Make sure we have that at the top of every React file. And let's create a stateless functional component this time. So say const message equals, and we'll say, let's give us a text of our message. Okay, and let's do this. Okay. So we're going to return just a nice div with an h1, and we'll put some text in it. And let's go ahead and also give it a div with like a message. Let's go ahead and add a message up there as well. Okay, so first thing I want to point out, actually this is kind of an accident, but it's interesting to know, since I've done something that isn't defined, we get a nice TS warning that says it's not defined. But this is where things get kind of cool. So now what I want to do is, instead of just leaving this as kind of an anonymous object here that I'm destructuring things with, I want to add a prop type for this component. So I could say iMessageProps. Okay, we're going to copy this and we're going to create an interface called iMessageProps. And on this, we're going to say that it needs a string and a message. Or excuse me, a title and a message that are both strings. Excuse me, text, not title. There, great. So now what we can do is we can import our message component. We need to make sure we actually export it for default message. Okay, we're going to do that as a default export. We're going to import message from /components/message. Okay, now watch this. This is what's so awesome. So first of all, I get my nice autocomplete here, and then as I do this, I can see that this thing takes the props that I've defined on that interface. So I can say message equals hello and text equals world. But what's interesting here is if I try to pass something that's not a string, I'm going to get a type error that says that this component takes something that takes a string as text and not as a number. So 0 is not assignable to that. Same if I pass false or anything like this. So I actually have to pass a string here. Okay? So then we can go run WebPack again and make sure everything is still good. Perfect. So that's just a really quick drive-by introduction to working with these two things. You can imagine how you could expand on this. It's a really powerful way to build React because you get this nice autocomplete. You get the prop validations. It's a really powerful tool. I would highly encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to dive into this, that you go in and give it a try. It's really fun to work with, and it's been making my world a lot easier when working with building large-scale React apps, so I don't have to remember which props are working with which components. Prop types did a pretty good job of that for a while, but there's just something about having this nice autocomplete with VS Code. So that's what it's like to work with React and Webpack and TypeScript.